Hi everyone, my name is Lois Harada and I graduated from the printmaking department in 2010. And I'm so excited to lead you on a tour today with Claudia Covert, who is a special collections librarian and exciting transportation. So Claudia, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thanks, Lois. Welcome to the second floor of the Fleet Library at RISD. The second floor is kind of our distinctive collections. We have all kinds of things up here, from archives, special collections, material collection, and picture collection. So if you follow me. So I guess this is our official lobby. This is the Visual and Material Resource Center housing picture collection and materials library over here. And this is the archives and special collections, and we're going to go in. So welcome to the reading room for archives and special collections. We're going to first take you back in our storage area, loop back here and meet Andy, and we can learn about things on the tables.
Very tantalizing, Claudia, but we'll come back.
And Doug is going to do this. This is our staff area, and it's also our scanning area. We often have somebody using our book on our face-up camera. And one of the nice features working with really delicate materials is our scanner comes with a V crate, a V cradle, so that we can handle things nicely.
And so this is great for large books, blueprints.
Blueprints, we actually make something bigger, but that's a whole nother project. But yes, it's great for books. Okay, now we're going to go. So you're coming back into a room that's 65 degrees Fahrenheit. Our humidity is usually 30 to 40% relative humidity. And this is to help us preserve the items that are back here. We're going to follow Doug. He'll take us in. You notice our walls are white. They're vapor barriers, helping us keep this cool temperature.
It is chilly. It's quite nice.
Chilly, yes. It's wonderful in the summer. Okay. And I'm going to start showing you a few things in special, and then we're going to come back and see Doug. And I'll introduce them. But we have lots of compact shelving. Probably need more compact shelving, but I won't. But so this is just to help us store the maximum number of items. So we're not really a browsable collection. You really can't browse us, but we shelve everything by size. So this is our periodicals. Our earliest periodicals are from the 1700s. All kinds of art and design related titles. You'll notice that, like most of our books, this whole wall is all artist books. You'll notice the vanilla and gray enclosures. Again, it's archival paper. We're trying to cut down on light damage, even though we have LED lights, and any dust, etc. pollution.
So are you making all of these enclosures, Claudia?
I'm not. But we have a team of students that do it.
Got it.
And what's great is sometimes when you open these boxes, you'll see a student's name or initials and the date they made the box.
Oh, that's another level of the collection. I love that.
Yeah. And so I can show you a few. I just pulled a couple artist books. These are two of the 4 winners from last year's Student Artist Book Contest. So we just had our 7th Baker and Whitehill Student Artist Book Contest. Every year we do a call for student entries for anything they've made book work in the last year. And I think last year we had 65 entries.
Oh, wow.
We filled the exhibit cases downstairs. And this year we did it all virtually. But we have Keep the Family Together by Olivia Stefflitz. I might be pronouncing her name wrong. I apologies. And Period Notepads by Yukti Agarwal.
It's great to see these in person, I think, after seeing them digitally, because they're so dimensional and so rich.
Yeah, and you can see I pulled these two because they don't come to mind as a standard book.
Mm-hmm.
But these are an example of things we do collect.
Claudia, can you talk about the name of the award?
The Baker and Whitehill, definitely. So I am only the second special collections librarian at RISD.
I didn't know that.
The first one was Lori Whitehill.
I did know that, I guess.
So we've actually only had a special collections librarian for, let's think about this, maybe 20 years. Mm-hmm. Okay. It is kind of interesting when you think the library was founded a year after RISD was founded. Mm-hmm. And Jan Baker is the person that I worked with for the first contest. And she donated money to keep the contest going. So graphic design professor, she donated many of her book works to the collection, as well as some of her student book works. And today we name it in honor of Jan and of Lori. So I did want to pull one example of a periodical that we have, and I think this one's kind of unique. And for Women's History Month, this is Flora Cowles. Her husband bankrolled her publication for 1 year called Flare. That 1 year, it cost, in 1950, it cost $2.5 million to produce this magazine.
Wow.
Yeah.
What is that in today's money, Claudia?
I have no idea. I can look that up and let you know. But Flora thought that magazines should be an experience. And so she loved doing gatefolds, different types of paper, cutouts, little doors. She would turn the magazine over and say, Ernest Hemingway, write something for it. So it's kind of a lifestyle magazine, and it only existed for a year.
Well, I can't imagine why it only made it a year. And do you know, is this offset printed or?
Some of it is, yes.
Mm-hmm.
She did different types of printing, different types of paper, die cuts, all kinds of things.
Oh, it's beautiful.
So it's truly enjoyable book. Okay. So here we are. We've moved away from periodicals and artist books. We're into the special collections, where kind of our normal size books are shelved, our really large folios, and then our oversized books. You can see we have a little bit of everything. Some really beautiful. This is the Turner Gallery, bound leather, gold embossed. And then we have things like Jack Kirby's Fantastic Four. I think I pointed out the G.I. Joe book with the doll in it. So we collect all kinds of things from really the 1400s to today. A little bit of everything.
And Claudia, are things organized in this section by size or by content, a little both?
So it's by call number, so it is kind of by subject area, and then we do by size. So you have to know two things to find it. And like we have carts that are ready for things. We do scanning by camera, we do scanning by our book file.
And so are these things that people have requested to look at and you'll scan it and send it to them?
Yes and no. So sometimes we are scanning things on our own based on just popularity, like pop-up books are a huge popular thing for us. So we're going through making little movies or pop-up books. And then design diplomas. I guess I could talk a little bit about that, but we have all kinds of design diplomas for an exhibit. So we that is per request, and we're scanning them all. Oh, cool. Yeah. So I pulled a few things, thinking about Women's History Month. And also, illustration faculty member said, hey, it's great. You have all these men, golden age illustrators. How about some women? I was like, sure, let's see what we can do. So we have Mommy's Bedtime Story. This is illustrated by Jessie M. King. She was a Scottish female illustrator in the golden age.
How beautiful.
These beautiful illustrations and color printing. This is 1829.
Mm-hmm.
Oops, I'm sorry.
I love the color.
Yeah. And then we also, because we don't just collect books, we collect ephemera things. Found this set, which is Mother Goose Melodies, illustrated by Jessie Wilcox Smith. I thought this was interesting. One, it was done with Good Housekeeping magazine. She had done a book called Mother Goose Melody, Mother Goose. And so with Good Housekeeping, she did these little chromolithography covers and did some black and white, illustrations on the inside, but Colgate toothpaste sponsored it.
Morning rush on the tube.
So we have this kind of ephemera, interesting illustration, interesting ephemera collection as well. Now there's a Colgate ad.
I thought these were postcards, but they're actually small books.
They're little books, yeah, for little children, little hands.
So Claudia, did these all come in as one donation to the library, or did you collect a few from someone and a few from someone else?
So we do accept donations, and we also have a small budget that we do. Like this faculty member, I work with them to select some things. We use our small budget to purchase these two things you're seeing right now.
Okay.
But I do have something in the back that's a gift I can show you. Ooh.
Claudia, do you ever get lost in here?
Sometimes.
Oh, Claudia, can I pull you back?
Yes, you can pull it back. What's up?
We got stuck on the shelf. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the odd shaped things on the shelf?
Sure. So these are the entries from last year's Student Artist Book Contest. The exhibit was up when we closed down the campus. And so they're here waiting to be reunited with their owners. But you can see all the types of entries and bookwork we get for the contest.
Thanks, Claudia.
You're welcome. That's why they're not enclosed in our archival enclosures.
They're just visiting.
They're just visiting, but they get the same treatment, the same climate control. So I pulled this because of Women's History Month as well. This is the Stern Beads and Jigs collection of miniature books. This is one of 12 boxes. So yes, there are 11 other boxes. And so we do have a miniature book collection of about over 400 titles. We do collect. And this is in our exhibit prep and processing room because we're working on housing for them. So we want to house them in nice boxes like this. So we're working on that. That's actually what happens in this room. Donations come here, acquisitions come here, things that need to be rehoused come here, things that need to get ready to be prepped for an exhibit come here. And this is where we work on them.
Okay.
So this is an interesting collection. It does have titles by and about women, but Stern, Beads, and Jigs were 3 women, grandmother, mother, and daughter, who all collected miniature books.
Oh, wow.
And we were discussing before this that there's a Victorian miniature book was Chantelet was a kind of a brooch with little chains, decorative chains on it that Victorian women wore at their waist. And they would have things like maybe a Bible or maybe an almanac for the year attached on one of those chains. It was kind of, because they were not pockets, it was a woman's toolkit. You might have a sewing kit, paper, magnifying glass, that sort of thing. So miniature books have been around for a long time, but they kind of hit popularity in the 1800s.
And so the reasons that the books were printed so small was so that
They could be
women could
carried.
carry them. Okay.
They can be carried in a pocket for those that have pockets. Sometimes they're just tied up and even could be tied on your arm or around your neck. Often they're religious objects like Qurans, Bibles, etc. But they grew into children's books for children.
With their young eyes.
And they're young. Young eyes, yeah.
Oh, thanks, Claudia.
So anything under 3 inches is considered a miniature book.
Okay, so 3 inches tall
And 3 inches wide.
I'm gonna file that away for for trivia night.
Yeah, that's a good trivia. And the last thing I was going to show you is our collection, our small collection of illuminations from the 13 and 1400s. And it's back here because we're working on how to house them and how to handle them best. So these are leaves that were in books at some point. They're vellum. They're various sizes. This is a Spanish devotional manuscript. And you may notice I'm using my clean hands to handle things. Gloves we use for photographs. But in general, we find clean hands are the best way to handle things.
And are the markings on the edges, are they notes? Are they, yeah,
So that's how they would line up the text, because this is all
Oh.
hand done.
got it.
So I guess it's like illustrator lines, or InDesign lines.
Like a guideline.
Yeah, yeah. So here's our smallest one. So this would have been in somebody's pocket, carried around.
The gold leaf is beautiful.
Yeah,
Not sure if you can, yeah.
see that? Okay. Well, I am going to introduce Doug Joe, our digital archivist, and let him take it away.
Hi, Deb.
Hey, nice to meet you. Hello. Move this way.
Sounds good. Thanks, Claudia.
Thank you, Lois.
And we'll see you for the Q&A.
Okay.
So here, Claudia mentioned design diplomas. This is from 1974. The student baked a cookie for every single graduate.
How many graduates, Doug?
Oh, back then it would have been 200-300.
And they were all the same style of cookie?
Yep.
Oh my goodness.
We have two of these. One's in perfect condition, the other one's in pieces. But
Wow.
yeah, she baked them.
And this is a well,
Mhm,
wow,
Design
Doug.
diploma.
Can't even remember what our class did. It was not this.
And a bit of building trivia. This used to be the roof
Ah,
up until the 1970s when the Royal Hospital Trust added a new roof and made this space,
uh-huh.
which we now use. There used to be skylights in this roof
Oh,
for the
wow.
mezzanine down below. We collect student work, photography portfolios, FAV student work, architecture, and a graduate thesis we kept here. So we also have some out in the meeting room. We just created a new shelf space for them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And do these also live in the regular library downstairs as
Yeah,
well?
they rotate. They start downstairs and they, as they age out, they move up here. More of mementos. And then Obama was. We got rid of the cereal. This is the official. Here's the seal.
Oh, the official
It's borrowed,
Branson
it's
seal.
borrowed every year for diplomas and special proclamations.
Hmm.
It was designed by John Howard Benson. And various hard hats. There's another design diploma. And the question we get a lot of times is, where did all this information, these records come from? Well, our first semester here, we found this key. And we did a bit of sleuthing and found in the first floor of the college building, there's an old original safe going back to the 1800s. Large walk-in, it was behind the copier. Went over, stuck the key in, turned the lock, and it opened up, and we found all of the corporate records
Oh
going
my
back to
goodness.
1877.
Wow. Is that safe still there, Doug? Is
Yep, still there.
there anything in it? Mini
I
fridge?
don't know now. We emptied it. But yeah, it's the basis of our corporate and presidential
Oh, wow.
collections.
Mhm.
A lot of the questions we get from outside researchers, genealogical, well, they want to know what their grandfather went here or whatever. But we also, someone created this index card These are all the RISD graduate students who served in World War One.
Oh.
So if anybody wants to know, simply look.
And so who created that box?
We found this someone back in the World War One era.
Okay.
With all the time and effort to do that. These are photograph collections, buildings, exhibition photographs and negatives. The publications going back to 1871.
So Doug, am I right that you might eventually run out of space?
You could probably say we've run out of space in this area.
Uh-huh.
Which you probably see we're looking at. Let's move along. These are the corporate records and also the presidential records. Tom Schuette's are right there. The oldest record we have goes back to about 1790s.
Oh, wow.
It's a deed for the Central Block area.
Okay. So what's the Central Block area today?
Central Block, that's where the museum is, college building, that whole block.
Mhm.
That's where RISD started, the water building. And gradually just grew,
Uh-huh.
expanded. Yeah. Academic affairs, presidential records. And speaking of records, one year, 1998, the museum director wanted to empty a closet. He was looking for more office space. And the museum received as a donation was known as a Wetmore room. She bought it from an antique dealer. Someone had gone in and taken a room right out of the building, sold it to her, and she gave it to RISD. And RISD reconstructed it on the third floor, the museum.
I know the room. Yeah.
Okay. Well, they had a huge walk-in closet that she wanted to use for office space. We went over there for about a week. We pulled out over 100 record cards of records. That's basically this entire row. The photography department used to have a room in the design center where they would loan out portfolios from students. And eventually some of the portfolios didn't make it back. So they transferred everything over to us. And so now we collect all the student
Oh, wow.
portfolios going back to the McGowan years of 1966.
So do you have something from every department, Doug, or is it?
No, not every department. We just couldn't handle that.
Right.
So.
And is this your handwriting, Doug, on all the boxes?
No, that's someone else. I can show you one more. One problem we're dealing with now. There was old video cassettes. This is a pneumatic 3/4 inch. But the problem is all this format's, it's a dead format, and the actual materials themselves are degrading every year. So we're working to start digitizing these materials. We're working on a grant right now for a small project. Working more through VHS and a few of these, but over time, we're going to have to either digitize them or just say goodbye to them.
Right. So once something has been digitized, do you still hold it in
Yes.
the collection?
Yeah, there are institutions that have gone through the whole digitization process. Something happens to the files, they get corrupted, they
Right.
lose them, they have a massive breakdown, and they have to go back and do it all over again.
Right. But by digitizing it, you can preserve it, and then it's just easier to
Yeah,
share as
Right,
well.
we can't use these now.
Right. I don't even know what format that is, Doug.
Yeah. It's one of those long-term projects
Yeah.
that unfortunately cost a lot of money.
Oh, I'm sure. So what other strange format things do you have?
The perpetual drawings that are here. We've done over about 12,000 sheets.
Oh, wow. And so these are from architecture students.
No, these came from facilities.
Oh, I see. Okay.
They have them over there in Woodshire Garage. They came to us. And they're heavily used by architecture students and by interior architecture.
Oh, more interesting.
They use the building plans for redesign, looking at mechanical systems, and such.
Yeah.
So they're very popular. You can see that photograph of Roger Campbell. You may see these heads up here. That came from liberal arts cabarets
Oh, wow.
from the 1980s, 90s. We used to do that every winter session.
And Doug, what's this model?
That's a model. It's the Museum Farrago wing site model,
Okay.
created by Tony Atkins and Associates, the designers of the Farrago.
So Doug, you have a little bit of everything
Yeah.
and a lot of bit of anything.
Well, one of our most used collections. This came from Registrar's office. I was talking about genealogy, people would say, did my great grandmother go to RISD? This is the first place we look, because you can see, just pull one card out. Someone went to all the trouble, name, address, years they attended, did they graduate, the department.
Oh, wow.
So it's an amazing resource for us, because up to about 1950.
And that's just an index card.
Yep, that's all it is.
So will those be digitized as well? Or?
It'd be great if they could be. For those OCR, ability,
Yeah.
it'd be great.
Wow, that sounds like a big project though.
It'd be a big project.
Yeah.
So we also have a poster collection. I used to go around every year and collect posters from the walls. We used to get about 150 a year.
Oh, wow.
Not except for last year.
Yeah.
They're all cataloged. So
There's always so many great posters on campus.
mhm.
We used to determine a poster's success by how fast it got stolen. So you knew you're on the right track if it went before the event date.
Yeah, I try to wait till after.
Yeah.
the event. That defeats the purpose. So. Yeah. This way.
Yeah.
You know, all talking about digital. This collection here is the last collection we have of photographs taken on film.
Oh, wow.
This is about 2005. So,
So instead of receiving boxes of photos, now you must receive CDs of
Yeah.
thousands of photos.
and that's the problem. Before we used to get, when they take a roll of film, 36 images, they choose 3 or 4, they print those out, and we get those prints. We might come up and we'll get the negatives. Well, now they go with a digital camera, they take 100 images. You don't want 100 images. Now I turn over to archivists and Martinez, and you can show you some of our highlights.
Thanks, Doug.
You're welcome.
Hi, Andy.
Hi, happy Founders Day. Well, I hope you all have had a chance to at least get a better understanding of how much material we have and how it's organized back in storage. And what we are now in the reading room where researchers and classes come and we were able to pull out material for them and show it to them. So given the theme of Founders Day, I decided to pull some artifacts from the early years of RISD to share with you. So first thing we have here is, for those of you who don't know the story of RISD's founding, at the time of the 1876 Centennial Exhibition in Philadelphia, women from different states and territories around the US were fundraising to put together exhibits of women's work, arts and other women's industries to show at the World's Fair in the main building. As the fair became bigger and more populated, the women were kicked out of that building and told as long as they raised their own money to build a structure, pay for its the function of running it, which included security and the electricity and anything else needed for the pavilion to keep it running, they could have such a building. So the Rhode Island women were actually the third most successful group of women to raise money. And after the end of the fair, they had over $1,600 left in their funds. And it was Helen Adeliero Metcalf who decided that there should be a School of Art and Design. Here I have some brochures that we have in our collection, but the Rhode Island Art Association was a group of prominent Rhode Island businessmen, politicians and such, who captains of industry who thought Rhode Island needed a School of Art and Design and a Museum of Art. They had a attempt in the 1850s that went nowhere. In 1870, right before, a few years before RISD, there was a move to get a free public library, art gallery, and museum at RISD. So both these efforts weren't as successful in any way as RISD was, and RISD was able to do it with less money, but probably more ambition. So Doug had mentioned the material that had come out of the safe in the Franklin Hotel or the college building, including the first minute book of the Board of Trustees. So here we have the initial meeting in March 5th of 1877, where the trustees got together and decided, we're going to start this thing. 1 month later, April 5th, the State Assembly, General Assembly, issued to RISD its Articles of Incorporation, and here are the original Articles of Incorporation. So it,
great seal, Andy.
yeah, very nice. It's impressive. We talk about giving it a kind of more official framing to trot out the charter of the school there. So it took a year to get things up and running, but in 1878, we had our first classes in the Hoppin Homestead building, which was 283 Westminster Street. And here are photos of this building. It no longer exists. If you were to walk down Westminster Street, the block of the Hoppin Homestead is now a parking lot. But you'll see this building with the turret there, and the state archives had been located there as well. So 1878, this is the original mission, the historic mission of RISD. It makes its first appearance in 1878, but the instruction of artisans, drawing, painting, modeling, systematic training of students, and the practice of art, and the ability to give instruction to others, and also the general advancement of public art education through exhibition of works of art and lectures. So that's RISD's original founding mission. Charles Berry, who had served as the director of public school supervisor drawing in public schools for the city of Boston, applied for the job and was given the job as the first headmaster of RISD. After his interview, he sent a letter in which he details over 13 or so pages his ideas for what the school should be and how it should, what it should offer. So he was prepared to do the job. He stayed for 3 years as headmaster. We had headmasters until 1901. Then we had directors. The title of president actually went to the chair of the Board of Trustees. Our third director, Earl Rowe, in 1912, was actually a museum person. So he ran both the school and the museum. And in 1929, the trustees decided to divide things up between the school and the museum. So you have a school educational director and a museum director. We didn't have administrative presidents till 1946. So this is the only photo we have of the classroom at the Hoppin Homestead building. This is around 1892. Seated with her arms folded there is Eliza Radicky, who is the daughter of Helen Metcalf, RISD's principal founder. So after Mrs. Metcalf passed away in 1895, her daughter Eliza went ahead and took over her mother's role of overseeing the day-to-day business of the school. Eliza was very hands-on. Her husband had died early, Dr. Radicky, and so she devoted her time and efforts to RISD and collecting works of art. So she was a really important patron of RISD. Eliza had graduated from Vassar College in the 1870s, but she did attend classes at RISD. And one of the things she did in the 1880s was we had two headmasters, one in charge of the freehand program, which was drawing and painting, things like that. And there's a mechanical director as well, and they feuded. And she spent the year keeping tabs on them and writing things down in her diary and reporting back to the trustees.
Wow.
So, and these are a group of 5 or 6 women in the who went down the street to another photo studio and had their group portrait taken. But we find all these women are in this picture as well. So these were 6 RISD students who went down the street and took a group photo. So it's nice that we have that.
Oh, wow.
This is the registrar's book, beginning in 1878, October, the first class, but we can see the names of students, both male and female, where they may have lived, if they were day or evening students, and the evening students would have professions. We see architect, someone working for the Providence and Bristol Railroad, jewelers. So that's great resources in that regard. So you might notice in the photos, what are these plaster casts, but the Providence Art Association, which never got off the ground, they did donate a painting to RISD when we were opened in 1878 in Asher Durand landscape. So we've had a collection since the beginning, but a lot of the collection were these examples of plaster casts that the students used. And at the time, it was appropriate and understandable the way of art instruction was copying. So if you're going to learn about modeling and forms in nature, you would copy them. So we have a collection of these that came from foundation studies. Merlin Saz, who taught foundation here for decades, was vital in keeping these around, and they have since come to the archives, but we have a collection of these.
I was going to say, I had Merlin's class, and my plaster cast did not look anywhere near as good as these.
No. Merlin was keeping alive this notion of modeling in relief like that too, and he would design medals and bronzes and things like that. So it wasn't until 1893 that we left the Hoppin Homestead building. We eventually rented 4 rooms on the top floor, and that's when we came to the Waterman building, which RISD built for itself in 1893, and that was how we established our foothold on College Hill here. So here's one of our earliest images from the Waterman building, and you can see works on the wall, as well as some more of these plaster casts. We have faculty in the front here, and this woman in the back row, she's the tallest, or she has the tallest hair, we'll say. She actually had sent a letter to RISD when this was published in an alumni bulletin, and identified, to the best of her memory, all these students sitting in the picture, as well as faculty. But it's 1902, 1903, and 1904 class. This is our one of our first yearbooks, going to 1914.
Wow.
So people ask me when the name RISD came about. It's a good question, when that became the shorthand, but at one time it was RISD. We dropped the O. But this yearbook has images of students, but we also have student activities, and we did have a girls' basketball team back in 1914.
The team have a name, maybe?
The Designers was the name of the men's team. The D on their jerseys indicate they're designers. But you know, we do have images of the students and some kind of joke biographies of them. I'm just sharing this with you. This doesn't have a date, but it's when we still did not have the college building. The reason why we have the 2 College Street mailing address is the administration was all set up in the Waterman building until the college building came online in 1937. And then the director of education, all the administration, registrar, they all moved to that building. So anything that predates that era would have the 11 Waterman Street address for RISD. So this is a notice about a smallpox outbreak.
How timely.
This is not the first pandemic RISD went through. We've looked into the 1918 flu pandemic, and RISD did close for a couple of weeks due to that, and had to shift its schedule back due to that. I would be amiss if I didn't show you the earliest image of the RISD library. This is in the Waterman building, and you can see the bookcases in which the books were kept. And these are actually Providence school children who would come on Saturdays for classes through the school.
Now, are those bookcases still there?
The Nature Lab has a lot of the bookcases.
I was going to say that style looks familiar.
When the Waterman building, or when the college building opened up in 37, at 2 College Street, the library moved to the 4th floor there on the corner, and of Benefit and College Street. And when the library vacated the space, Edna Lawrence, who taught nature drawing in freshman was asked to put together a nature collection. So she inherited the space that was the library. So a lot of those fixtures are still there in the nature lab. Here's some more early images. These date from around 1903 as well, but here's a women's portrait class. And here's a men's sculpture class. So, you know, I'm going to say it's safe to say, you see some more of these casts in the background. But if they were going to draw a naked figure, they were going to segregate the men and women for those classes. These are fun and interesting. I never bring them out, but these survived back in the days of World Fair, and these just kind of different associations that put on annual exhibitions. The Rhode Island Industrial Exhibition for the encouragement of domestic industry. RISD put an exhibition of schoolwork on, and they had this nice diploma in 1888 for that, a nice certificate. And the State Fair Association, RISD was awarded for its excellence in exhibit, and I'm sure they presented student work as well.
Those are great.
Yeah, but you know, they're nice examples of illustration. Some more early classroom photos I have for you over here. This is the jewelry class. And, you know, looking at the mounts and the descriptions, these must have been trotted out somewhere. I don't know, for admission recruiting or what. But examples of student work, you can see what they do in the jewelry class. This is actually a building West Hall that we bought to expand after the Waterman building. And it was torn down to make way for the Metcalf building in 1915-16. So that's where the jewelry class is, and you can see there are both men and women in the classroom. I'll show you, we're also involved in teacher education as well. These are public school teachers who probably attended on a Saturday, but they were, you know, much of the work of the school teacher would be in front of the class at a blackboard. And they were taught how to give instruction and draw on blackboards.
And was this the first degree that RISD offered?
It was the first of all, it was the first discipline with a curriculum, a 4-year curriculum that the students had to make their way through, and they also needed a high school diploma to attend. So they set that first standard, and then when it came time for degrees, RISD got permission from the state of Rhode Island to offer degrees. And that's when we had our first, we prior to that gave out certificates and diplomas, but this allowed RISD to offer BFAs and MFAs eventually in the 1960s, but in both cases, it was art education that came first in offering degree programs. And so as teachers, they would also have different projects for different grade levels. And so these are the kind of work that they were doing to teach to each grade level in the school, learning from that. We have a jewelry class as well here. This is probably our earliest image of architecture and architecture students here. We see a woman here. There's Frances Henley, who was the first woman registered architect in Rhode Island, went to RISD. And her papers ended up at the Rhode Island Historical Society. But unfortunately, she tells stories of not being taken seriously and being harassed, showing up on job sites, and you know, not giving the respect by the workers there. So, but she was a pioneer, and she was a RISD graduate in that regard. This is a painting class from 1907. I'm going to point out John Fraser, who Fraser Terrace, the Fraser Award, was a graduate of RISD, eventually became president in 1958. So that's John Fraser there, our president, as a student, a painting student. And I believe this student here, who looks like Leonardo DiCaprio, we know he was a library, he had a library job as a student at RISD. So maybe that's our first work study student. I'll give him credit for that.
And you have so much good stuff out. Do you have one or two other things before we shift to the Q&A?
Yeah, this can be real quick, but these are early museum records. I didn't want to forget the museum, but minutes where they're actually designing cases during their meetings for the Best for Museum. They went to the MFA in Boston to look at wall colors, experienced that. Here are earliest images of the RISD Museum. School children, this is the Nature Lab space. And this is when we had a cast collection, which was perfectly appropriate for museums at the turn of the 19th, 20th century. And then we have a poster designed by Sydney Burleigh, who taught here at RISD. And if you know the yellow house on Waterman Street or Angel Street that the Art Association has, he was the designer of that house. He was he was an instrumental founder of the Art Association, but he did end up teaching at RISD. And this is a poster he designed in 1895 for a museum exhibition, which we had.
Oh, that's great.
So
Thanks,
that's just a sampling of things that came out of the boxes and that we could share with you. So.
Oh, that was great history. Thank you. So stay tuned. Feel free to put questions in the chat. We're going to split to separate rooms to start that Q&A. So we'll see you in just a moment. Awesome. Thanks, Andy.
Hi, everybody. I want to start by giving Margot a moment to introduce who wasn't joining us on the tour. So Margot, if you want to unmute.
Hey, everybody. And can you hear me? Sorry, I'm not used to headphones. But thank you to Claudia, Doug, and Andy for that great introduction for everyone and all the wonderful, every time we do something like this, I see something new. And I imagine for the community watching, that was an amazing sort of insight into just the depth and richness of our archives, but also into special collections where we have an amazing amount of material that also talks about the context of RISD's founding too, where we try to collect. And so I am just happy everyone could join us today. And have a little more insight and some of the sort of treats that we all have, being able to have close, sort of exposure to the collection, but because of the nature of it, is usually kept behind closed doors and in, lightless boxes and things like that. So anyway, enjoy, welcome, and just nice to be able to join you all.
Oh, excellent. So I have a few questions in the Q&A. So if you have a question, just feel free to pop it in the Q&A section or the chat and we can grab it. Question 1, how do you decide what is worthy to be kept? That's an intimidating first question.
Well, from day one, one of the first things we did when we established an archives in 1997 was to set up criteria for what we collect and why we collect it. So we are an institutional archive, so the bulk of our material does come from specificity around RISD. So the bulk of our records were created here on site as part of day-to-day RISD business. We'll take on collections as long as they relate to RISD and individuals associated with RISD, but they have to be in good condition, usable, and hopefully we anticipate that there's a research use for them. but we keep things for historical reasons, legal reasons, administrative reasons. So, you know, if you call me and say, we want to restart an alumni award for something, and what happened to the last one? We had that around lasted for 20 years. What happened? So as an administrator, you could approach us and we'd go through our records and hopefully find an answer for that. So we collect things, hoping and anticipating that there will be a future use for them. And some things we, for sensitive reasons, will maybe put an embargo on, and they may be closed for 20, 25, 30 years. But there will be a time when we'll be able to share those with people. So.
Great, thanks, Andy. Next question, which I'm going to need a little bit of background on. Have there been any additions to the Dazzle Camouflage collection?
I guess that would be me. And it's very funny because what's behind me? We have this great collection from World War I where a RISD alum, Maurice Freeman, he attended RISD for illustration, worked as one of the first camoufleurs in the United States on camouflage for ships that was called Dazzle camouflage. And it's geometric shapes. It's not what you expect, but this is before radar, before sonar. This is when cubism was big, vorticism as well. And so it's kind of breaking up the shape of the ship. So when a U-boat captain looks through the periscope, what direction is that ship going in? How fast is it going? They get confused. And the idea is either the torpedo would miss the ship or hit it in a less vital area. So we're very, Maurice donated his collection of plans and photos. And we're still adding, as artists and designers have a great history with camouflage. It's not something that science, it was a great collaboration between scientists and designers and artists. There are artists that are still working on and creating camouflage. So we still add to that.
Claudia, can you give us the title of someone who makes camouflage again?
Oh, I'm sorry, the person that donated it
Or no, if my profession was to make camouflage, I would be a...
Oh, I would be a camoufleur.
Okay, I've really made some bad career decisions.
I know, I want that to be my title.
All right, let's see. Another question, Andy, I think this one's headed back to you. Why would you embargo something for a few years?
Well, one of our principles is confidentiality. For instance, FERPA is students going through the school, and as administrators, which is the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, that your academic record, kind of like your HIPAA health records, are closed except to select individuals. So, but for instance, FERPA allows for the death of the individual, or else 75 years after the creation of a college transcript to share that information. But for instance, Roseanne will be stepping down as president soon. And, to assure administrators that they can do their job without someone looking over their shoulder, we promise them that their records will be closed for quite some time. So they're not afraid of making moves or documenting what they do for fear that someone's going to take it and run with it and say, can you believe so-and-so did this? So it allows them to do their job without worrying that everyone's looking over their shoulder, and they can concentrate on what they feel they need to do. So.
Thanks, Andy. I think in my head, I was thinking, what is the cookie design diploma embargo? But that was not the case.
No.
Doug, I think I have a question for you. Are there any 16mm films in the collection?
Yes, there are. Most of those are from FAV students going back to early 70s through probably the 90s. They did make the switch to videotape in the 1980s, but because film can be very expensive to work with, getting it processed, has to go out, has to be outsourced. So we usually went to Boston, get it finished. Yes, we do a sizable collection of 16mm films. They're all kept in the mic film vault down the basement. It's temperature controlled, humidity controlled. So.
We'll have to visit the basement on our next go around. And Doug, are you working on archiving those as well, or is that again a little further down the line?
That's a little further down the line. They've all been cataloged, but it's much more stable than videotape. So less of a concern.
Mm-hmm. And I have a question about access. I know as a student, you were able to make appointments to come visit and look at materials. How has that changed? Are there, online programs, scans, et cetera?
I could take that if you want. Sure. So we are limited to in-person appointments, and those are right now just for the RISD community. They're on campus being tested regularly. But we do offer virtual appointments via our document camera. And we're also doing classes, all classes are virtual, and we're doing this all via Zoom.
And Claudia, I think I was trying to lead you to talk about RISD Unbound a little too.
I just saw that in the chat. Thank you, Lois. So starting April 10th through the 18th will be RISD Unbound, which is the art book fair of RISD, I guess you could say. It's brought to you by the library. It was an idea that came out of Special Collections. So yeah, I guess I can blame myself for that. But it's been going 5 years strong. The past 2 years have had to be virtual, but when it's in person, it's a day-long event with people, RISD students and RISD community members selling all kinds of printed materials, books, zines, comics, posters, etc. And we're doing it virtually. We're going to have a series of virtual events as well as virtual tables where you will still get to see those books, zines, and other printed materials, but it will all be online. And join us April 10th, and the URL is in the chat. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Claudia. I think that was our last question. We've got a question about if the tour will be recorded, and it will, and I think it will even make it to YouTube. So I'll have Claire and Mariam from the office follow up with more details there. That's the last of our questions. Doug, Andy, Claudia, Margot, did you want to add anything else while we have a semi-captive Zoom audience?
No, just that I look forward to seeing everybody back in the library, and don't hesitate to ask us to look at things that you saw today or for more if they pertain to any of your research questions, or you're just inquisitive about RISD's history and wonderful special collections resources. I mean, we might be closed physically, but to a wider community, but we're open online, and we like to share. So thank you all.
Great. Thank you so much. And thanks to everyone who joined us today. And hopefully we'll see you for the next tour. Thanks, everyone.